Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are very excited to share with you different stories about love and betrayal from around the world. Now let's begin today's storytelling journey. If you go, I promise you won't be able to come back. Callum's voice echoed in the room, deep and cold. He stood in the center of the living room, hands in his pockets, expressionless as he watched his wife Serena hastily pack her suitcase. The morning sunlight of Paris streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows into their expensive apartment, yet failed to warm the frozen air inside. Serena's hands trembled slightly, but she continued stuffing clothes into her suitcase, forcing a casual smile. "Don't be so dramatic, Callum. It's just a business trip. I'll be back in 4 days." "A business trip to Nice with Dominic?" Callum slowly pronounced the name, as if each syllable carried venom. "Don't take me for a fool, Serena." Their marriage had lasted 7 years. Callum was a digital forensics expert working at Paris's top cybersecurity company, specializing in data security and evidence collection for corporations and government agencies. Serena was a high-end hotel consulting advisor whose work required frequent travel to provide service optimization and staff training solutions for luxury hotels worldwide. Their life should have been perfect. No children to tie them down, a double high income, a luxury apartment in central Paris, and lavish vacations every year. Yet beneath the perfect surface, cracks had already silently formed. Dominic is an important client. His hotel group needs a comprehensive service standard upgrade. Serena closed her suitcase and looked directly into her husband's eyes. "We'll be staying at different hotels. This is purely work." Callum stood silently, his tall figure casting a long shadow in the morning light. As a digital forensics expert, his work had made him an exceptionally good observer, skilled at spotting the subtle clues people try to hide. At this moment, every micro-expression on his wife's face was telling him she was lying, and without remorse. "This is the final warning, Serena." Callum's voice was frighteningly calm, his eyes flickering with cold determination. "If you go to Nice with him, don't ever think about coming back to this home. I'm serious." Serena rolled her eyes and pulled up the handle of her suitcase. "Come on, you always make things sound serious, but you never really take action. I'll be back Thursday, and you'll be in a better mood by then." She casually grabbed her handbag and walked toward the door, as if her husband's warning was just a daily triviality. Callum didn't stop her, nor did he say another word. He just stood there, watching his wife walk out the door. When the door closed, his phone rang. It was his colleague Ethan. "Is everything ready?" came Ethan's voice from the other end of the line. "Yes," Callum answered, his gaze determined. "Initiate the plan." Dominic's reappearance in Serena's life happened 3 months ago. As her college boyfriend, they had once shared an intense but brief relationship, which ended when Dominic left for the United States to develop his career. 15 years later, when Dominic returned to Paris as a successful international property developer and contacted Serena's consulting firm, that familiar flutter returned. At this moment, sitting on the high-speed train to Nice, Serena's thoughts kept returning to her husband's parting warning. Callum had always been a steady person, rarely angry, and certainly not one to threaten without reason. But in recent months, he had become increasingly silent, increasingly distant, as if completely consumed by work. "What are you thinking about?" Dominic elegantly handed her a glass of champagne and sat down beside her. Sunlight streamed through the train window onto his handsome profile, highlighting that charming smile line. "Nothing, just work stuff," Serena lied, taking a sip of champagne. Dominic smiled, his blue eyes sparkling with a light Serena could not resist. "Relax, darling. These few days will be extraordinary." His hand gently covered hers. "I have a surprise to tell you." Serena knew she shouldn't allow this intimacy, but there was something magnetic about Dominic that she couldn't refuse. Over the past 3 months, their relationship had slowly slipped from professional to the dangerous edge. Initially, just business lunches, then dinners, followed by long late-night calls and secret texts. However, they hadn't crossed that final line yet. At least, that's what she told herself. "What surprise?" Serena asked, trying to ignore the unease in her heart. "I've bought an old hotel in Monaco and plan to completely renovate it." Dominic leaned closer to her, his voice lowering. "I want you to be the chief consultant for this project, taking full responsibility for rebuilding the service system. The salary is 3 times your current one." Serena looked at him in surprise. This was a professional opportunity she couldn't refuse, but she knew what accepting would mean. She would have to work in Monaco long-term, away from Paris, away from Callum. You don't need to answer right away, Dominic continued, his fingers gently sliding over her wrist. Think about it over the next few days. This weekend, we'll stay at the best hotel in Nice, and you can see my operational philosophy firsthand. Serena's heart raced. She knew this was more than just a job offer. Her marriage with Callum had been without passion for a long time, their life trajectories increasingly parallel. Callum always worked late into the night, and even at home, he was distracted, immersed in his computers and files. Dominic made her feel valued and appreciated again. I need time to think, Serena finally said, but she didn't withdraw her hand. Meanwhile, in the Paris apartment, Callum was working with his team. As an expert in digital forensics, Callum never did anything without preparation. Since noticing the anomalies in Serena's behavior 3 months ago, he had been legally collecting evidence. All the call records are here. Ethan pointed to the data on the screen. Your wife and this Dominic talk for at least an hour every day, mostly when you're working overtime. Callum nodded, expressionless. On his computer screen was a detailed report, a background check on Dominic. On the surface, Dominic was a successful property developer owning luxury hotels and resorts across Europe. But Callum's investigation had unearthed deeper information. His funding sources are quite suspicious, said Vivian, another member of the cybersecurity team. Over the past 5 years, his company has received large amounts of funding from several offshore accounts linked to money laundering cases. And this isn't his first time doing this, Ethan added. We've tracked at least 3 cases where he approached married women, offered lucrative job opportunities, then used their company identities and social circles to expand his business. Callum silently looked at the screen, fingers lightly tapping the desk. 7 years of marriage, and this was how it ended. How had the distance between them grown so large? Despite his busy work, he still tried to be there for her at key moments, arranged weekend dates, remembered every important day. Now, these efforts seemed so pale and powerless in the face of betrayal. He wasn't a workaholic, just that the nature of his work required him to stay focused. Over the past year, he had been involved in a major cybersecurity project, working with law enforcement agencies in several European countries to track an international money laundering network. This was important work concerning public safety, not simply professional ambition. They'll be staying at the Meridian Hotel in Nice tonight, Vivian continued reporting. Separate rooms, but on the same floor. Callum took a deep breath and made his decision. Contact the team in Nice. Ensure everything goes according to plan. Meanwhile, Ethan, prepare the legal documents. If the situation is as we suspect, I won't give her a second chance. Are you sure? Ethan asked with concern. Perhaps you could try to salvage. No. Callum firmly interrupted. Betrayal is betrayal. I gave her a chance to choose, and she made her decision. Now, I must make mine. The seaside hotel in Nice was elegant and private. Serena and Dominic arrived in the evening. Although they did indeed arrange separate rooms, when Dominic invited her to his suite to discuss project details after dinner, Serena knew tonight would change everything. Would you like something to drink? Dominic asked with his back to her, taking an expensive bottle of champagne from the minibar. Serena stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing at the Mediterranean night. Deep inside, a voice was warning her to stop, but another stronger impulse drove her forward. Champagne would be nice, she heard herself answer. When Dominic moved closer and handed her the glass, their fingers brushed. In that moment, Serena felt an electric current run through her body. Dominic's gaze deepened, and he slowly lowered his head to kiss her lips. Serena didn't resist. 7 years of marriage, countless nights when Callum neglected her for work, and the uncertainty about the future. All these made her surrender to this moment of passion. That night, she made her choice, crossing that irreversible line. When she returned to her own room, it was 3 in the morning. There were 5 missed calls from Callum on her phone, but she chose to ignore them. She told herself she would talk properly with Callum after returning to Paris on Thursday. Anyway, he was always so busy. He would surely forgive her little adventure as he had in the past. The next morning, Serena and Dominic visited several of his properties in Nice. Dominic explained his business plans in detail, which indeed sounded impressive. At lunch, He proposed a more specific collaboration. "I need your expertise," Dominic said while cutting his steak. "But I need your network even more. Your client network in Paris is crucial for our expansion." Serena felt slightly uncomfortable. "You mean introducing my existing clients to you?" "Not just that," Dominic smiled. "I want you to be the face of my company. You know, some clients need special care." "What do you mean?" Dominic put down his knife and fork and lowered his voice. "Some clients value privacy and need flexible financial arrangements. Your company and reputation can help us approach these high-end clients." Serena felt a chill. "What are you implying?" "Just business flexibility, darling," Dominic said dismissively. "In our industry, sometimes we need to help clients resolve sensitive issues. For instance, some clients might want to transfer funds without drawing attention." Serena's expression changed. She suddenly realized that the opportunity Dominic offered might involve illegal activities. "I won't be involved in anything illegal, Dominic." "Who said anything about illegal?" Dominic laughed. "Just utilizing legal gray areas. Think about it. Triple the salary, a luxurious lifestyle, we could travel the world together. Would you rather continue living this neglected life?" Serena fell silent. She remembered Callum's warning, and unease began to rise within her. Perhaps she had made a terrible mistake. That evening, Serena received a text message from an unknown number. "Check your email." She opened her inbox to find an email with no subject, containing only a link. After clicking, she saw a series of photos, her and Dominic at the hotel, at restaurants, and even their intimate embrace at his room door last night. Then, her phone rang. "Do you understand my warning now?" Callum's voice came from the other end, cool and unfamiliar. "You had someone follow me?" Serena asked in shock. "No need. The security systems at nice hotels are managed by our company, and I only legally obtained surveillance footage from public areas." Callum replied calmly. "More importantly, you should know who your new boyfriend really is." Another email arrived, containing a detailed report revealing Dominic's true background. He was suspected of multiple money laundering activities, using his hotel network to illegally transfer funds for clients, and one of his methods was to use reputable industry professionals as cover. "This can't be," Serena mumbled, but deep down, she knew it was true. "The divorce papers are ready," Callum continued. "I've packed your personal belongings and placed them in storage. The security system at the apartment has been reset, and your access has been revoked. You can't do this." Serena exclaimed. "I warned you. If you left, don't expect to come back." Callum's voice held no emotion, "and you chose to leave." The call ended. Serena sat numbly on the bed, the phone slipping from her fingers. Only now did she truly understand Callum's warning. Not a physical threat, but that she could never return to their marriage and life. Worse still, a third email arrived, showing that Dominic was under investigation by French and international law enforcement agencies, and her relationship with him might implicate her. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Serena trembled as she opened it to find Dominic standing outside, his face grim. "We need to leave immediately," he said urgently. "Information has been leaked. We must go to Monaco. It's safer there." Serena stared at him, suddenly seeing this man's true face. "You used me," she said softly. Dominic shook his head impatiently. "Now is not the time to discuss this. Pack your things, we must go." Serena stood frozen, at a loss. She had already lost her husband, home, and professional reputation. If she left with Dominic, she might be implicated in serious legal trouble. But if she stayed, she would have nothing. "Hurry!" Dominic grabbed her arm, urging her. At that moment, there came urgent footsteps and French shouts in the hotel corridor. "Police! Don't move!" Dominic's face instantly turned pale. He released Serena and turned to flee, but the corridor was already blocked by police at both ends. "Dominic, you are under arrest for suspected money laundering and financial fraud." An officer approached and handcuffed him. Another officer walked toward Serena. "Miss Serena, we need your assistance with the investigation." Serena nodded woodenly, tears silently streaming down her face. She finally understood the full meaning of Callum's words. "If you go, I promise you won't be able to come back." And indeed, she could never go back. The golden autumn sunlight of Paris fell on the fallen leaves in Luxembourg Gardens, where tourists and locals strolled leisurely along the tree-lined paths. Callum sat on a park bench, Reviewing documents on cybersecurity, his expression focused and calm. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. The court proceedings were remarkably smooth. His well-prepared evidence, plus Serena's implication in Dominic's case, led the judge to make a swift decision. The property division was clean and final, with no room for negotiation. "How's the case progressing?" Ethan sat down beside him with 2 cups of coffee. "Nearly concluded." Callum accepted the coffee, his voice calm. "Dominic's accounts have all been frozen, and his network is collapsing. You know, many people in your position would break down." Ethan observed his expression, "But you handled it so decisively." "Betrayal is betrayal. There's nothing to hesitate about." Callum's tone was resolute. "When she chose to leave, everything was already over." "I heard she got a light sentence with police assistance," Ethan continued. 6 months probation and community service, in exchange for her testimony about Dominic's network. "That's none of my business," Callum responded coldly. Nevertheless, as a professional, he still followed the case's progress. Dominic's criminal network was more extensive than imagined, involving wealthy individuals and politicians across multiple countries. "She tried to contact you, didn't she?" Ethan asked. "I changed all my contact information." Callum's voice was calm and determined. "Past matters are finished." In fact, Serena had tried to contact him. 2 weeks ago, a letter arrived at his office. It was full of excuses and self-justification, claiming how she was manipulated by Dominic, how she felt neglected in their marriage. Callum didn't even finish reading it before feeding it into the shredder. In his view, there was no excuse for betrayal. 7 years of marriage should have withstood any test, yet she chose the most contemptible way to end it. In a small cafe in Marseille, Serena sat in a corner seat, impatiently refreshing her inbox. Since the case ended, her professional life had plummeted. No high-end hotel would hire a consultant associated with financial crime. Even though she insisted she was merely used, she was forced to leave Paris and move to Marseille in the south, where she rented a small apartment. She now worked for a small tourism company, earning a fraction of her previous salary, with work far less challenging than before. "Would you like another coffee?" the waiter asked, interrupting her thoughts. "No," Serena said briefly. "Just the bill, please." After the waiter left, she checked her inbox again, still no response. Over the past few months, she had written countless emails and letters to Callum, first demanding an explanation for why he was so ruthless, then shifting to apologies and pleas. But he had vanished completely, cutting off all contact. She couldn't understand how someone who once loved her could be so cold and heartless. Her phone vibrated, displaying a new message. It was from Isabel, her new friend in Marseille. "Still coming to the party tonight? There are some tourism industry people who want to meet you." Serena sighed. Isabel was one of the few people who knew her past, but was still willing to help. This party was carefully arranged by Isabel, hoping to help her find better job opportunities. "I'll be there. Thank you," she replied. After paying the bill, Serena left the cafe and strolled along the ancient streets of Marseille. The autumn breeze brushed her cheeks, bringing a slight chill. She recalled those days with Dominic in Nice, the decision that completely changed her life. Dominic was now in prison, facing a 15-year sentence. Investigations showed he used his hotel network to launder money for various suspicious clients, amounts totaling hundreds of millions of euros. And she, Serena, had almost become part of that network if it wasn't for Callum. She stopped walking and gazed at the distant Mediterranean. Callum. She had never truly understood how important his work was, how great his responsibilities were. He wasn't simply a workaholic, but was handling truly important cases, protecting countless people from criminals. And she, feeling neglected, had easily betrayed their marriage. Her phone vibrated again, this time from an unknown number. Serena hesitated before answering. "Miss Serena?" a female voice asked. "Yes, that's me. This is Martine from the Paris prosecutor's office. We need you to testify again regarding new developments in Dominic's case." Serena's heart sank. She thought this was all over. "What new developments?" "We've discovered that Mr. Dominic's network is more extensive than we thought. Some of his partners are planning retaliatory actions against those who testified against him." Serena felt a wave of fear. "Are you saying I'm in danger?" "We have reason to believe so. We recommend you change your residence immediately and consider entering a witness protection program." After the call ended, Serena stood frozen, feeling the world spinning around her. She suddenly realized she had not only lost her husband, home, and career, but now her safety as well. And all this stemmed from that one wrong decision. In the Paris office, Callum was discussing the latest case developments with his team. Since Dominic's arrest, they had exposed a massive international money laundering network involving political and business figures from multiple countries. The latest intelligence shows that several of Dominic's main partners are planning retaliation. Vivian pointed to the information on the screen. They're specifically targeting key witnesses who testified. Callum's heart suddenly tightened. Is there a specific list? Still analyzing, but based on communications monitoring, Serena might be the primary target. Callum stood up and walked to the window. He shouldn't care. They were divorced. She had made her choice, betrayed their marriage. But regardless, putting her in real danger was far beyond any retribution or justice he wanted. Does she know? He asked, his back to the team. The prosecutor's office has notified her, Ethan answered, but she refused the witness protection program. She said she doesn't want to run and hide again. Callum turned around, his face showing disbelief. Is she crazy? These people aren't joking. They'll kill her. She seems to have given up, Vivian said softly. According to our monitoring, she's been very depressed in recent weeks, almost cutting off contact with the outside world. Callum fell into thought. Whatever Serena had done, she shouldn't pay for it with her life. But he also knew he couldn't intervene directly. It would affect the investigation and reopen wounds he had tried to heal. We need a plan, he finally said, to protect her without exposing our monitoring. The night in Marseille was more bustling than in Paris. Serena returned from Isabel's party feeling more exhausted than when she left. Despite meeting several potential employers, she could see the doubt and reservation in their eyes. Her name, her past, followed her like a shadow. Opening her apartment door, she sensed something was wrong. The lights were off, just as she had left them, but something felt off. There was a hint of unfamiliar scent in the air, some kind of aftershave. She hesitated, about to retreat through the door, when suddenly she felt a hand cover her mouth from behind. Don't make a sound, a man whispered in her ear, his voice carrying an Eastern European accent. We just need you to sign some documents. Then you can continue your miserable life. Serena tried to struggle, but another person grabbed her arms and dragged her into the apartment. The door closed behind her, and she was pushed onto the sofa. Look who we have here, the second man said, turning on a lamp. Dominic's little lover, the woman who sent him to prison. In the dim light, Serena made out the faces of two strangers, one tall and burly with a thick beard, the other thin and agile with cold eyes. Both wore ordinary dark clothes, looking like regular tourists, but their manner and tone exuded danger. I don't know what you want, Serena said, trembling. I have no money, nothing of value. The bearded man snorted. We don't need your money, darling. We need you to sign this. He tossed her a document, a statement saying your previous testimony was forced and false. That's impossible. Serena shook her head. I won't lie. The thin man pulled a knife from inside his jacket, flashing it in the light. Are you sure? We have many ways to persuade you. Serena felt a wave of fear. This was what the prosecutor had warned her about. She should have accepted protection, but she refused because she didn't want to run from reality again. Now, she might pay for that decision with her life. You have 5 minutes to think, the bearded man said, walking toward the kitchen. I'll get some water, and when I come back, I hope to see your signature. Otherwise, he gave a meaningful look at his companion and the knife. When the two men momentarily separated, Serena knew this might be her only chance. Her phone was in her pocket, but she didn't dare take it out. Who would come to save her? The police? They'd need time. Friends? In Marseille, she had hardly any real friends. Callum. The name suddenly flashed in her mind. But he wouldn't come. He had made it clear that she had been completely erased from his life. Just then, all the lights in the apartment suddenly went out. What the hell? Cursed the bearded man from the kitchen. Immediately after, someone broke down the front door. In the darkness, Serena heard rapid footsteps and the sound of bodies colliding. Someone was fighting. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her arm. She was about to scream when a familiar voice sounded in her ear. Come with me, quickly. Callum. He pulled her through the dark apartment, escaping through the back door. Outside, a A black sedan was waiting, with Ethan in the driver's seat. "Get in," Callum ordered, pushing her into the back seat, following closely behind. "Drive." He closed the door, and Ethan immediately started the car, quickly leaving the scene. Serena turned to Callum, looking at him in shock. In the streetlight's glow, his face bore an expression of tension and anger. "How are you here?" she murmured, not believing her eyes. "We've been monitoring Dominic's network," Callum answered briefly. "We discovered they planned to retaliate against you. But why did you come to save me? I thought you. Whatever happened between us, I wouldn't let you get hurt for helping us dismantle this criminal network." Callum's voice was cold and professional, as if he were merely performing his duty. The car continued through the streets of Marseille, with Ethan skillfully evading possible pursuit. "Where are we going next?" Serena asked, trying to gather her thoughts. "A safe house," Callum answered, "until we completely dismantle Dominic's network. It could take days or weeks." Serena nodded silently. She knew she had no choice, but more importantly, she knew she didn't deserve Callum's help, didn't deserve him risking his life to save her. "Thank you," she finally said softly. "I know you have no reason to do this." Callum just nodded briefly, not looking at her. His expression was hard as stone, with no flicker of emotion in his eyes. The safe house was located in a secluded spot on the outskirts of Marseille. It was an ordinary two-story building, unremarkable from the outside, but Serena knew it must be equipped with the most advanced security systems and monitoring equipment. "You'll stay here until the case concludes," Callum said while checking the room. "There are 2 security personnel on 24-hour shifts, and food and essentials have been prepared." Serena looked around. The room was simple but comfortable, with a bed, a desk, a chair, and a television. The windows were small with heavy curtains, obviously to prevent external observation. "Will you be here too?" she asked, her voice carrying a hint of hope. Callum shook his head. "I need to return to Paris to coordinate operations. Ethan will stay here responsible for your safety." Serena felt a wave of disappointment, but she knew she had no right to ask for more. Callum had already done enough, considering her betrayal of him. "Callum, she began, wanting to apologize, to explain, but the words knotted in her throat. "No need to say anything," Callum coldly interrupted her. "This is just work. After we catch these people, you can leave France, the farther the better." His words were cold and final, leaving no room for reconciliation. Serena tried to find a trace of their old feelings in his face, but saw only a stranger's countenance. "I wrote you many letters," Serena ventured. "Did you receive them?" "I did," he answered shortly, his eyes showing no ripple of emotion. "And destroyed them all. Betrayal is betrayal, there are no excuses. I warned you. You made your choice, now bear the consequences. You can't just end everything like this." Serena's voice rose, a hint of anger replacing her previous remorse. 7 years of marriage can't just be written off. Callum looked at her, his eyes showing only coldness and weariness. "The moment you slept with him, our marriage was already over. Someone will come tomorrow to record your testimony. After that, I hope never to see you again." With that, he turned and left the room decisively. When the door closed, Serena angrily struck the mattress. She had lost everything: status, security, comfortable life. Yet Callum acted so ruthlessly. None of this should have turned out this way. Over the next few days, Serena cooperated with investigators, providing detailed testimony and information. She recalled every conversation with Dominic, every detail that might involve his criminal network. Though mentally exhausted, she knew this was the only thing she could do: help destroy the network that had nearly ruined her life. Callum never came to the safe house again. All communications went through Ethan. Serena tried to ask about him, but Ethan was always vague, saying only that he was busy and the case was progressing. On the evening of the 5th day, Ethan brought shocking news. "We've got them," he announced excitedly. "Dominic's main partners are all arrested. The information you provided was crucial." Serena breathed a sigh of relief. "So, is it all over?" Ethan nodded. "Basically, yes. Of course, there are still legal procedures to follow, and you may need to testify in court, but the most dangerous part is over." "When can I leave here?" Serena asked, though she wasn't sure where she wanted to go. "Tomorrow," Ethan answered. "Callum says you can return to Marseille, or if you want to move elsewhere, we can provide assistance." For safety reasons, you might need to change your identity. Serena nodded, a deep feeling of fatigue enveloping her. Changing identity, moving to a strange place, starting over. Is this what the rest of her life would look like? Callum. She hesitated. Will he come? Before I leave. Ethan avoided her gaze. He's very busy. Lots of work wrapping up the case. But he asked me to convey his best wishes. Serena forced a smile, but in her heart, she knew Callum didn't want to see her again. That best wishes was probably Ethan's own invention to comfort her. The next morning, Serena was packing her few personal belongings, preparing to leave the safe house. She didn't know where she would go, perhaps back to Marseille to pack. And then where? She had lost everything worth holding on to. Just then, the door opened, and Callum walked in. He looked exhausted, with deep circles under his eyes, clearly not having rested well for days. Callum, Serena exclaimed in surprise, almost dropping her bag. The case is wrapped up, he said briefly. I've come to take you back to Marseille. Serena didn't know what to say. She had thought he wouldn't come again, that their final goodbye was that cold night. Thank you, she finally said. But you don't have to do this. I can go back by myself. It's procedure, Callum answered. Ensuring witnesses return safely is our responsibility. His tone was official, but Serena noticed his gaze was no longer as cold as before. Something had changed. Perhaps fatigue had diluted the anger. Perhaps the end of the case brought some relief. They drove back to Marseille in silence. Callum focused on the road, while Serena gazed at the passing scenery outside the window. This might be the last time they would be together, she realized, and a deep sadness enveloped her. When the car entered Marseille, Callum finally broke the silence. What are your plans now? Serena shook her head. I don't know. Maybe leave France, go somewhere where nobody knows me, and start over. Callum nodded thoughtfully. We can help arrange that, if you need. New identity, new job recommendation letters. Why? Serena asked. Why still help me? Callum gave her a cool glance. It's my job. We were tracking Dominic's criminal network, and you happened to be one of the witnesses. That's all. There was no emotion in his voice, nor any trace of past affection in his eyes. This was a professional handling a case, nothing more. I thought. Serena began, but the words quickly died in her throat. Thought what? Callum's tone was icy. Thought I would forgive you? Thought I would forget how you betrayed our marriage, betrayed my trust? That decision was yours alone, Serena. Now you face its consequences. The car stopped in front of her apartment building. This place had been checked by police and confirmed safe. Callum turned to her, truly looking into her eyes for the first time. Remember, Serena, every choice has consequences. Your choices led to all this. His voice no longer carried accusation, but a calm statement. I hope you make better decisions in your new life. Serena pressed her lips together, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. She wouldn't break down in front of him. Goodbye, Callum. Her voice was barely audible. Good luck, Miss Serena, Callum replied, using her maiden name, his tone businesslike. As she walked toward the apartment building, she couldn't help looking back. Callum had already taken out his phone and was making a call, seemingly having put her completely behind him. No regret, no hesitation, just a complete severance. She had naively thought that after all this, perhaps there might be a possibility of reconciliation. But now she understood that once some choices are made, they can never be undone. She chose betrayal, and the price was complete exile. The price of betrayal is never being able to turn back. 6 months later, spring returned to Paris, the city bathed in warm sunshine. Callum stood on the balcony of his new apartment, overlooking the beautiful view of the Seine. The phone rang. It was Ethan. Hey, did you see the news? Dominic was attacked in prison. His condition is critical. I saw it, Callum answered. Is there any progress in the investigation? Not yet. By the way, I have news about Serena. Callum gripped the phone tightly. He rarely mentioned her, but that didn't mean he didn't want to know how she was doing. She moved to Vancouver, Canada, Ethan continued. Changed her identity, working at a small tourism company. She seems to be adapting well. That's good, Callum replied briefly, unwilling to show too much emotion. After the call ended, he put down the phone and continued working. As for Serena's news, he felt nothing, no relief, no anger, not even curiosity. She had been completely excised from his life, like a malignant tumor. He glanced at the new project files on the table. This was the focus of his life now: work, achievement, and a future that didn't involve Serena at all. He had even started dating a woman who understood and respected his work, someone who would never betray trust. Callum opened the file, completely immersed in work. When he received the message about Serena being threatened, his intervention was out of professional responsibility, nothing more. He hadn't wavered for a moment in his decision. Traitors don't deserve a second chance. On the other side of the world, Serena began her new life, bearing the consequences of her choices. And in Paris, Callum had completely moved forward, with no thought of looking back. His warning was never just a threat. If you go, I promise you won't be able to come back. This was a promise, one he had completely fulfilled. And Serena, indeed, could never come back. If this story resonated with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more wonderful content. Looking forward to seeing you in our next story.